Hey guys, it's Clovis, and today we're going to talk about fairies. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been waiting for this. People seem to really like fairies, like especially the leader abilities. I always get a lot of people talking about Dancing Elf and the crazy leader abilities. People really like the LP gain leader ability, but I personally think it's crap. But it doesn't mean just because I have that leader ability, it's useless, right? But, a lot of the other leader abilities for fairies are super good, so I'm cutting straight into them, of course. So let's go to Dancing Elf, because Dancing Elf has the low-level abilities, which are pretty interesting, because fairies get two of them, actually. So let's just talk about the actual leader ability, the full set first. You can see we've got a whopping 7 leader abilities, which is, definitely the highest of any monster in the game. You got Dancing Elf and Key Mace both have this exact same set. As you can see, they're both 1-star fairies. The 2-star fairies actually have LP Recovery as their low-level ability, but they do not have the direct damage halved, which is important, so let's go through them one by one. LP Recovery will regenerate 50 life points every time you end your turn. Direct damage halved will halve the damage you take from direct attacks. That doesn't include burn cards, it's only direct attacks. Extended support range, that extends the range of any leader ability you have that has a range. So the first two abilities I mentioned do not have a range, but everything below this actually does have a range. Increased strength for same type friendlies obviously increases fairies, provided you have a fairy deck leader. This basically, you can go up to 5 stars, right? Every summoning star your deck leader has that has this leader ability will give 100 bonus attack and defense to all your nearby fairies. It does max out at 5, so the max you can get is 500 attack and defense boost for your allies. Which is, good, because this is extended support range, so if you play something in front of you, and then move it forward, it will still be in that range where it basically gets 500 attack and defense. So it's essentially a free power-up, like a free silver bow and arrow on top of any fairy you summon out of the hand, which is really cool. Improved resistance for same type friendlies is very strong. Fairies are one of the 2 monster types to actually get this leader ability, the other being rocks. And what this does is make your allied fairies immune to spell and traps, provided it's within the effective range, of course. So if you play aggressive with fairies and you're attacking into the enemy, you don't have to worry about trap cards, provided you're attacking into them with fairies. It's really cool, actually, and this includes attacking into stuff like Paralyzing Potion and Curse Breaker, and also protects your allied fairies from spell cards such as if an enemy plays Dark Hole. Also, if either player play cards such as Fairy Meteor Crush, and one of the meteors lands on your fairy within the range, it protects it. Other cards, there's actually quite a lot, Change of Heart, Brain Control, and Raigeki just have no effect. All those cards, the big impact cards that normally destroy or change control of a monster, have no effect. I'm pretty sure this leader ability does nothing against flip effects and like monster effects, but spell and trap cards, it definitely has that effect for it, and I even think it works on full range traps. So yeah, very cool. And then we've got the bottom 2 here. So Spellbind specific enemy type and Destroy specific enemy type is 2 of like the best leader abilities, like in terms of devastation. If you're against those like particular deck matchups, it's a free win pretty much. So Spellbind specific enemy type targets zombies. So if you're against zombies, anytime a zombie ends up within your deck leader range, it gets spellbound permanently, until you move away. So if you play against, say, Bones for whatever reason, if you have a fairy deck leader with this ability, he won't actually really be able to do anything to you unless he chooses to attack you with his machines and insects, but all of his zombies he'll play will just be spellbound straight away. In fact, you can even you can even cover his summoning area, and anytime he plays a zombie, it'll just be spellbound straight from the hand, which is ridiculous. And if you transfer that to the Destroy specific enemy type, we've got Destroy specific enemy type works on fiends. So, if you're versing like the final bosses, like Chakra, or if you're versing Panic, every time they play a fiend, it gets destroyed, provided your deck leader is within the effective range of it. So, considering all the monsters in Panic's decks are fiend, every time he plays something and moves it towards you, or you move your effective range over his monsters, they'll just be instantly destroyed and sent to the graveyard, so that's always fun. So yeah, but it's interesting to note because, Fiends are one of the more stronger types of monsters in the game. They have like the strongest creatures like, Zoa, Summon Skull, stuff like that. So it's really nice to have a leader ability that just handles all of them. If you have this, if you have a ranked up Fairy, then you don't have to worry about that, so really, really cool stuff. And if you go to the higher level ones, you notice you don't have the low level abilities anymore, but you still retain all these other abilities. And the important thing about that is, if you have a card such as Dark Witch, which is my recommendation for a deck leader, you actually have, more damage. The increased strength for same type friendlies, that's up to 500 attack and defense bonus, as opposed to having, a 1-star Key Mace or Dancing Elf that are only going to give your allies 100 attack. But, there are strategies where you can do that. For example, if you want to keep your cards under 1000 attack, so you can use Yakuto no Megami, the only 6-star fairy. This flips all your cards that are 1000 attack or below by 1000 points. There's actually quite a few fairies that have pretty good effects and pretty low attack. We'll be going through them, one by one. We've got to figure this stuff out. So let's just actually talk firstly about the, non-effect monsters, because they're quicker to go through. The important thing to notice, or take note of rather, when talking about fairies is if they're female or not, because females are really good for fusions, but also the important thing is actually the Dark Witch fusion. To make Dark Witch, it's one of the most common fusions in the game. You just need to fuse a female with a fairy. So if you have a deck full of female fairies, you can pretty much fuse any 2 cards to create this, and this is the 2nd highest attack fairy in the game, and just like Yakuto no Megami, you can use all of your female equips on it. Not that you need to. I mean, you've got Silver Bow and Arrow, Bright Castle, and Horn of Light. Very, very versatile equips in the fairy deck, using lots of light creatures outside the fairy archetype, including, the light spellcasters, maybe even the light warriors if you want, or the light dragons, if you have a lot of the Hourglass of Life and stuff, but we're getting into that in a second. The important thing about this is, it's your way of bringing out decent damage, some of the best damage you can get out of a fairy monster, with, just simple fusions, like a couple 1-stars, any female works, so you can fuse Key Mace, for example, Key Mace with, what's that card? Unhappy Maiden. So both of those cards are 1-star, but it brings out Dark Witch, which is 5-star. So instead of playing this out the hand for 5 stars, it's better to just fusion summon this, and you have 1800 attack for 1-star. Usually, most of the time it's 2 stars, but if you construct your deck correctly, you'll make 1-star. The difference is, if you fuse Dancing Elf, that is an elf card. And this is actually really important to mention, I guess, if I can find it. Yeah, Dancing Elf. So, Dancing Elf is actually one of your best fairy cards, because not only is it 1-star with really low deck cost, it has Elf in the name. So, if you fuse this with a light female that has less than 800 attack, you create Mystical Elf, and Mystical Elf is insane. This card, Mystical Elf, I'll try and find it. It's a 4-star female monster, right, that increases all of your light cards by 800 points. It's a flip effect, and you can, because that's a fusion, you can actually make as many of them as you want, provided you have, say, three Dancing Elves, and also 3 Wing Egg Elf, which is also another fairy we'll get to, but Mystical Elf is a very important fusion for any light deck, and fairies are no exception, because you can create this using just fairies, so that's super, super important. The main thing with light decks in general is you want to buff stack heavily, and fairies are the best for that, I guess you could say. So, to quickly finish off with these vanilla monsters, Airknight Parshath is your highest attack one, the highest attack fairy you can get in the game, but you can't fusion summon it, and you can't equip it with female equips like Dark Witch, so damage options, you probably are better off with Dark Witch, but Airknight Parshath is cool, and it's always nice to have monster in your hand that's 5 summoning levels, because if you're constantly fusion summoning in a deck like fairies, then maybe you actually have the summoning power to be able to play higher level stuff. 5 summoning levels isn't even that crazy, but it's a lot higher than 1 to bring out Dark Witch, so there you go. Dome of the Angel of Silence is interesting because it's the only dark fairy, and don't let the name Angel fool you. This isn't a female card or anything, so don't put female equips on this. This card, in my opinion, is just not good because, yeah, it's 5 summoning levels for 1600 damage, which isn't that good. and it's just not really compatible. It doesn't have a lot of synergy with the rest of your cards. You know, it's not light, it's not female. It's just it costs you 5 summoning level to play this low damage 5-star monster that doesn't really do anything else for you apart from, you know, kind of sit there. I mean, it's a cool looking monster, don't get me wrong, but it's just not very good in this deck, so between your Dancing Elf, your vanilla monsters mainly, like, vanilla monsters, you don't even really have that many great fusion material except a Wing Egg Elf, which can also be used to create Dancing Elf. It's the same basically as Dancing Elf, except this monster is 3 stars, unfortunately, instead of 1 or even 2. But Wing Egg Elf you can fuse with Unhappy Maiden or any other light female that's low attack to make Mystical Elf, so you can stick 3 Dancing Elves in your deck and 3 Wing Egg Elves, and it's pretty easy to draw cards to be able to play Mystical Elf. And yeah, the buffs just get crazy. We haven't even gone to the effect monsters yet, so Lunar Queen in Elzame is also a very good card. If you notice, like, a lot of these, the female monsters usually are like 4 stars, like Goddess of the Third Eye and Spirit of Heart. Lunar Queen in Elzame fulfills the same role as those cards, except it's 3 stars, and that's a pretty big difference in my opinion, because remember, of course, as I usually mention, you regenerate 3 summoning stars per turn. So if you bottom out, for whatever reason you want to play your highest summoning level card in your hand and you have none the next turn, if you draw any of these cards the next turn, like when you regenerate 3 from 0, you're only going to be able to play Lunar Queen Elzame. You're not going to be able to play Spirit of the Heart or Goddess with the Third Eye if you redraw it and you run out of summoning power. So having 3 Lunar Queen Elzame is much more efficient than having any of these other cards. Orion the Battle King I'll mention quickly because it's like Air Knight Parshath, but with the attack of Dark Witch, I guess. It's not really that great, unless you want a bunch of, like, high-level fairies, I guess. But again, the whole point of, you know, Dark Witch, it's the same as Orion the Battle King and all these other high-attack cards, except it's a lot easier to bring out, and it has synergy. It's compatible with the female equip cards, which a lot of the other fairies are if you want to use them, but I did mention, you know, mainly want to be using stuff like Silver Bow and Arrow and Bright Castle for a fairy deck, but we'll go back into them a bit later, so let's actually just talk about the effect monsters now, because these are really, really good. A lot of the fairy effect monsters are really good. Hourglass of Courage is one of the best in my opinion. It's actually one of the best effect monsters in the game, I would say. So 4 stars is a bit disappointing, you know, it does cost a little bit to bring this out, and the attack is not that great, but the effect is really cool. So if your LP is over 1,000, when this card is destroyed by battle, the strength of all of your other monsters are increased by 1,000 points at a cost you pay 1,000 life points. So life point recovery is not that difficult to come by in this game. You know, you can just play, for every one of these you can just include Goblin Secret Remedy. It's like 10 deck cost. It's not the worst spell to play because, you know, you regenerate summoning power if you play a spell. So that always ties into the strategy if you're constantly doing that. And you can even, you know, you're a light deck, so you can play other cards like Fairies Gift, a light spellcaster. But basically, the cool thing about this thing dying in battle is you can actually kamikaze this thing. If you know the enemy is going to destroy this, you can, like, attack into them with this, and then all of your cards get 1,000 attack boost. And it's crazy because, you know, this is not like, this is Jewels of the Roses, guys. You don't have, like, once per turn or anything. If you have, like, 8,000 life points, and you just successfully smash 2 or 3 of these into the opponent, like, quite early on, then suddenly, you know, you have, like, 2,000-3,000 attack on top of all your other stuff, and that's not just the only buff, guys. Like, we already mentioned Mystical Elf, you've got other stuff, like I mentioned Gyakuten and Megami as well. You're also, you know, you've got to calculate the leader bonus, mountain field terrain bonus, as well as, you know, your equips. Already we're just hitting huge numbers without even thinking about it too hard, so definitely include these in your fairy deck, because these cards in this game are good in any deck. Hourglass of Courage you can stick in any deck and you'll have a great day. Just make sure to include some life point recovery as well, so that you don't bottom yourself out. Otherwise, you know, this card's useless. If you don't have 1,000 life points, this card has no effect essentially, so yeah. God, I hate engines sometimes. Alright, Shining Friendship, 4 stars, not very high attack, so again, this is not the best candidate. This spellbinds the enemy for 1 turn when it's flip face up. I always think the flip effect spellbinds are a lot more effective than the destruction ones. Because then, you know, you don't have to be scared. If they flip this up and it's stronger, you can just put this in defense mode. So that's something you can do with it. But, you know, 4 summon levels for 1300 attack, you've got better cards. Tenderness. This card is really interesting. When this card's in face-up defense position, all damage to life points is reduced by half. You'll have to experiment with some of the interactions, because I'm pretty confident this does actually reduce every possible like reduction of LP in half, not just damage, but actual like costs as well. So this actually also works in conjunction with stuff like direct damage half. So if you have this face up in defense and the enemy attacks you directly when you have Key Mace or Dancing Elf as your deck leader, you'll take 1/4 of that card's attack and damage. Like, it's insane. So yeah, this is really good in tandem with stuff like Hourglass of Courage. If it does work with that effect cost, you just pump yourself with like lots of life points and you play up Tenderness and just overwhelm the opponent. And you know, if you want to go for direct attacks, you can just manually put this into attack mode and attack them directly. So that's why this is a good card. Use A. Most people like probably haven't actually seen this card, but it's actually not bad. So the effect of this card is to strengthen all Musician King cards by 700 points. But this is a 3-star female fairy, so this is actually really good to chuck in a deck anyways, just because the synergy is really good. And the model is also identical to the Spirit of the Harp, just with different color schemes. So that's always nice, you know. It's always nice to have like cards that synergize with each other, like in terms of how they look. So sorry, just had to sneeze. Binding Chain, OP as hell. I'm pretty sure you can actually get this in the graveyard slots. While this card is in face-up defense position, all warrior monsters are spellbound. That's insane. Remember, guys, normally, you know, you'd think, oh, that's fine, because, you know, you can just use a card like Fisher or even Dark Hole, any destruction card to get rid of Binding Chain if it's face-up defense mode. But no, because, you know, the leader abilities. If this card is protected by that, then the enemy has to destroy it by battle to get rid of this effect if you have a face-up defense. Or use a card like Durdek, which maybe will go through the leader ability, but even after that, you know, there's nothing stopping it from going defense mode if you have that resistance. But the problem is with this card, for the enemy, of course, if they're all warriors and they are trying to play against you and you have this in face-up defense, there's nothing they can do against it. Especially if you have, the increased resistance, and this card's within the range of it. Pretty insane card. I mean, this in conjunction with the other one, wherever it is, Mystical Capture Chain. Yeah, I'll quickly go to this one, because it's essentially the same card, but slightly lower summoning level and attack defense. This one spellbinds all Fiend monsters, so if you manage to get this card before dueling someone like Panic, definitely stick it in your deck and play in face-up defense. As long as he doesn't have Gorgon's Eye, you can just do that and you'll automatically defeat him pretty much, because he won't be able to attack you, so yeah. Back to the effect monsters though, we'll go to Skelangel here. So this is actually a weird effect. It's like a bad version of like Solomon's Law Book, I guess. If a card has been played from the hand in the turn when this card is destroyed in battle, the owning player can play one more card from the hand. So with this actually, it's just weird wording because of the translations. If you've already played a card, and then this card, you attack someone with this and it gets destroyed, it lets you play another card. I don't really like that effect. It would be cool if, like, when it flipped up, it let you play another card, because then, you know, you could attack someone directly with it, and play another card on top of that and attack them directly. It would be really cool if you could do that with, like, 3 Skelangels and then, like, a 4th monster on top of it, and just, like, one turn kill someone with 4 Skelangels, provided you have enough summoning level, but no, it's not how it works. Skelangel's a pretty cool looking card, actually. I really like it, but as far as its effect goes, it's not very strong. So I don't really rate that card so high. Petite Angel revives in your own summoning area other than your current location when destroyed in battle. The really interesting thing about these types of effects is that it maintains its attack buffs. So you can do something like, imagine you have like a 4-star or lower. Actually, no, you don't even need a low leader ability. If you move this card out of your leader ability range with the damage bonus, so its attack remains below 1000, flip up Yakuten Megami, bring it back into your summoning level range, and then, you know, you've got like Hourglass of Courage, Mystical Elf, other stuff like, what's that card, Winged Trumpeter. You stick all those buffs on this. If the enemy somehow kill this via battle, it just respawns and you can keep stacking your buffs on it. So it's pretty insane, this card, actually. But if you don't buff it, then watch out, because, you know, it's just going to keep respawning in attack mode with its low attack, so just be careful about that. Hourglass of Life is like, it's kind of like the next card over from Hourglass of Courage. I don't like this card as much though, because the difference of this, so imagine the exact same card, but instead of buffing all of your other cards by 1000, it revives a maximum of 4 monsters with the highest attacks from your own graveyard as well as the opponent's. And it's revived under your control. That sounds really good. Like, imagine you destroy like a bunch of blue eyes and then you destroy this and it respawns a bunch of blue eyes, but most of the time it doesn't work. It's really, really silly actually. I think you need to have certain slots, like certain spaces around your deck leader open for this card to work properly, so I don't have too much information on this card, unfortunately. I haven't used it that much because I just think the other Hourglass card is just far, far better. Far better use of your life points as well. I mean, if you want to revive something in your graveyard or the enemy's graveyard that's strong, you could just use Monster Reborn. I know it's a lot higher deck cost, but it's a lot more reliable, and it's a good card in general. It's a good card in any deck that uses stuff like Mystical Elf, so, because you can just play it on top of Mystical Elf and then revive it and flip its effect back up, so. Rain Temperature is an awesome card because it's exactly 1000, so it's got that Gyakutena Megami synergy. It's got 3 summoning levels, so you can always play it, and this card actually has an effect where it cancels all power increases and decreases of an enemy monster in battle. So this takes away all the enemy buffs, like even the final boss, if they use like Ryoku or something, you can just attack it with this and it gets rid of all the attack buffs. Just remember it gets rid of decreases as well, so if you attack this, don't use this card to attack into an enemy that you've made walk into like a trap card or something. Like if you reduce their attack with a shadow spell and you attack them with this, they get their attack back, so just be careful with that. Goddess of Whim, very good fusion support against another 3 summoning level female, just underneath 1000 attack, so again it's got that Gyakutena Megami synergy. It's really, you really gotta count those buffs, guys, because that card makes these low attack cards really good if you play them correctly. The own attack and defense of this card is increased or decreased by up to 1500 attack points when entering battle. So, if you attack someone with this and you haven't stuck any quips on it, it can go up to, 2450 attack, or all the way down to 0 attack when attacking. And it's totally random. It can even stay the same attack theoretically, or increased by 100 or decreased by 100 or 200. But it's a surprise card. You never know when you can get a lot of damage out of this. If you just buff the shit out of this, you give this 2000 or 3000 damage buff worth, then your range of attack is somewhere between 1500 to 4500. It's actually ridiculous, so this card's always fun. Hoshi Ningen is a light support card. You can stick in any light deck. 2 summoning levels, which is pretty cool. You can play this and you keep one of the summoning level regenerate. This flips all your own light monsters by 300 points. So, not as good as Mystical Elf, but you don't have to fusion summon it to play it, so that's always something. And it's cool because it's got rainbows and stuff. It looks funny. It looks kind of stoned. It's like a stoned star with boots or shoes or whatever. Pretty interesting card. So Happy Lover is another card like Rain Temperature. It dispels all opposing monsters' attack and defense whenever you attack them. So yeah, it's basically the effect of this applies a curse breaker to the opponent and then attacks them. So just remember, they don't debuff themselves, so cards like Happy Lover and Rain Temperature, you can just stack a shit ton of buffs on them, and if they're stronger than stuff if they're over 4500 attack, and the enemy have no, terrain bonuses advantage, then this card will just destroy everything. It'll even destroy, the Ultimate Dragon, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, if it has over 4500 attack, because even if it's on Mountain, this gets Mountain bonus, so yeah, this card can be pretty lethal. If you buff the shit out of these, they can just go over anything without, struggling. Key Mace. When you flip this card face up, it shifts all cards into defense position. This is really good, both offensive and defensively. If the enemy have lots of low attack cards, most cards in the game have a lower attack than defense. Lower defense than attack. If the enemy have low enough defense to attack over, but not their attack is above yours, you can always flip this card up and then attack over them. You can also actually play this defensively by just putting it in face down defense mode, and when the enemy attacks it flips all cards, including that attacking card in defense mode, and then cancels the attack. And it's just in general a beautiful card for any fairy decks. It's a 1-star female fairy. So you should really be running, 2 or even 3 of these in any fairy deck, in my opinion. Weather Control is weird, okay? So when this card's flip face up, it transforms all adjacent spaces to Wasteland. I think that may be be a mistake. I don't know, maybe they just gave it a weird effect for no reason, but yeah, it's a light fairy that changes things to Wasteland, so synergy is a bit off in that deck. I don't know if you guys want to use any crazy strategies with like Call of the Haunted, but I wouldn't really recommend it personally. And the final one we have to discuss is Gyaku Megami, which, as I mentioned before, flips all your own monsters with its attack of 1,000 or lower by 1,000. So the point of these is to use all of your low attack stuff while it's low attack. You flip this card up first, and then you can use all your other stuff like Mystical Elf and, you know, Winged Trumpeter and stuff like that. Strategies I like to do even include moving them out of my deck leader range and out of the terrain range. For example, on like the my field, if you just stand in the middle with your deck leader and then move your cards onto the Wasteland, they're outside of the deck leader range and they're on Wasteland, so they'll drop back to, say, you know, we'll use Rain Temperature for an example, because its attack is 1,000, right? So 1,000 plus the leader ability would be 1,500, plus, you know, the mountain would be 2,000. So if you play this and move it away off onto the Wasteland, it gets rid of both of those, drops back to 1,000. You can flip the Gyaku Megami up to bump it back to 2,000, and then you can move the Rain Temperature back to the mountain, back under your leader ability, and it bumps up to 3,000 attacks. So that's without any equipped cards. You have this 1,000 attack card bump up to 3,000 with the effect of one monster and, you know, 2 nature effects in the game. And, you know, of course, that's before including all your other buffs. Yet again, mentioning, you know, Mystical Elf and Winged Trumpeter. Because, I mean, if you just use 2 of those each, 2 Mystical Elf and 2 Winged Trumpeter, that's already 2,800 damage. Like, it's just stupid. So 2,800 on top of 3,000 is, like, yeah, already, like, almost 6,000 attack just on a Rain Temperature when you haven't even used an equipped card on it. Like, it's just ridiculous, the buff stacking you can get. So let's finish off the video actually discussing, you know, the buff stacks and stuff like that. We'll actually talk about the equipped synergy and stuff. So of course, the first card we have to mention is Winged Trumpeter. This powers up all fairies by 600. This works on both sides of the field, so just be careful if you're playing against fairies. But this is a great card, you know, because you just play this if you're trying to regenerate summoning power and flip everything up on the field by 600. I actually think it's a better idea to play these after you've already set up a board, like, you know, have at least 3 fairy monsters out in the field, 3, maybe even 4 or 5. Don't just love the engine sounds, guys. But anyways, Winged Trumpeter, you flip up, all of your fairies gain 600 points, so that's really cool. What else do we have, though? Elf's Light is worth a mention, because you can stick this on the only fairy card with Elf in the name. Fusion Materials you make for Mystical Elf, but if you're going to be playing a lot of them, you may as well include Elf's Light. It's a 700 attack bonus, so it's not too bad, but, you know, I personally think it's just better to have the synergy of, like, for instance, if you're running a deck that's, you know, like Mystical Elf, what's the card again? Dark Witch. You can just include female equips and it works on all your stuff. But if you're running, like, you know, non-female fairies, you know, you want to include, first of all, Bright Castle. All your fairies except, you know, Dancing Elf, which you're going to be using for a fusion anyways, are all light. So Bright Castle is actually your top priority, because this you can also stick on the non-fairy bright cards, or light cards rather. Second focus, you want to include Silver Bow and Arrow. This works on all fairies, so that's something. So it'll work on pretty much all your cards you're going to play except for Mystical Elf. And if you're worried about that, again, as I mentioned, you can just focus on a female-based deck, and you've got access to 3 Electro Whips, 3 Cyber Shields, 3 Malevolent Nuzzlers. You can even do something along the lines of, you know, 3 Bright Castle, 3 female equips, and then, you know, 1 Silver Bow and Arrow, or, you know, maybe even Horn of Light. Up to you. Just check how many cards in your deck actually are compatible with Horn of Light. You definitely know Dark Witch is, so it's always a good investment, but Dark Witch has a lot of equips, and the important thing of that is you include what you have copies of. You include what's going to fit in your deck that's actually going to be applicable to other cards. Apart from that, I don't really know what to mention. Of course, we've got to mention the terrain bonus. We all know this, though, the Homestead Forest. Where is it? Mountain. So yeah, fairies are obviously strong on mountain. You can always do a strategy, you know, that has something like, you know, use Burning Land to get rid of your field bonus to drop all your stuff below 1,000 to use Gyaku Megami. And then flip a mountain to increase at 500 after the fact. It's always something you can do, but you don't really have to do that. I mean, it's totally up to you. One thing I want to mention though is, of course, Fairy Meteor Crush, wherever it is. Here we go. So I mentioned before the increased resistance leader ability. If you use Dark Hole, it will just destroy all your stuff. The game knows, you know, you shouldn't be doing that, which is ironic because it doesn't care if you use White Hole and Dark Hole at the same time. But if you use Fairy Meteor Crush, and it hits one of your cards, as I mentioned before, like near the start of the video, if it's within your deck leader range, it's actually protected. So if like you and the enemy have a full board of monsters and all your fairies are within your deck leader range, you can just activate a Fairy Meteor Crush on the field and then activate one straight from the hand, and you essentially cover potentially up to 20 spaces on the field and destroy all those cards that are not yours. If they hit any of your cards, they live because of your leader ability. So Fairy Meteor Crush, it's ironic too because it has fairy in the name, but this is actually a pretty good fairy card for that reason if you have that leader ability. So yeah, anyways, look, this is a pretty long video. If you guys have any more questions about fairies, leave them in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So bye bye.